Introducing our distinguished guests.
Thank you very much, Susan. So, as Susan said, I'm Dan Keshet. I will be moderating. What we have, the format that we have tonight is a panel discussion. It is not, we're not here to have a debate of, oh, this, build, don't build. What we're here is to inform all of you and, get out what is the plan, get the information, get what questions are on the table, what questions are people asking about the plan, and just get people more informed and more ready to go, because as Susan said, this is a decision that the people in Austin are going to have to make. So the panelists tonight, in no particular order, is on my right here is Ron McDaniel. He is a sales and marketing executive in technology, and he's lived here in Austin since 1992. As he told me, he has a board and commission habit that he can't quite break, including the chair of the planning and zoning, is that
planning and zoning, yeah.
Planning and zoning committee in Buda, the board of adjustment in Austin, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, the Zoning and Plating Board? Commission.
ZAP.
ZAP. On the steering committee of the Miller Neighborhood Association, and working with Friends of Austin Neighborhoods. And 2 seats down to my left is Roger Cobbin. Roger sits with me on the board of directors of the Downtown Austin Neighborhood Association. In fact, he lives pretty much across the street from the site of the proposed courthouse. He is also a sort of the co-founder and real mover and shaker behind Friends of Austin Neighborhoods, and one of the original founding Aura members. We have sitting in front of me here, Genevieve, I'm sorry,
Van Cleve.
Okay, Van Cleve, who is the president of Van Bell Industries, a campaign manager, an active citizen in many ways, the former executive director of Texas Women Vote, which was one of the important organizations in democratic mobilization following the Wendy Davis filibuster and leading up into the previous election, and a former deputy director of Annie's List, which is a leading organization in recruiting and helping female candidates for office. And she is going to be in a minute. She is going to be giving the sort of opening information, which lays the background for the conversation that we'll have later. And she also wanted me to inform everyone about her household, including her husband and cats.
We have 6. We're going to be on a show.
And then, seated to my left is the Honorable Eric Shepard.
Ben.
So Judge Shepard, it took office in January 2007.
Don't read that.
Okay.
Just,
do you want to?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, so when it's your time to talk, I'll ask you to talk a little bit about your relationship to the courthouse. All right, Genevieve, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, all right. Thank you for inviting me, Aura. I'm so glad there is an urbanist organization now in Austin. I've lived here since 1975 in Travis County. And we're growing by leaps and bounds, so it makes me feel so much better to know that we don't just have NIMBYs, we also have urbanists. All right, so I do work for the bond campaign. I'm a proponent of the bond, so I want to be clear with you. I want this bond to pass, and this is information that I've gleaned from public documents from the county in preparation for this bond campaign, and I want to share some of it with you. And there's only 15. If Belinda Powell's here, she has like 80. All right, so some of this is going to be fairly evident to y'all. I don't want to spend a lot of time unless you have questions about the need for the courthouse. Our courthouse was built in 1931 when we had 77,777 people in Travis County. We're over 1 million now. The courthouse has served us well since '31, although when it was built, it had no women's restrooms. It was designed to be segregated. The good news about the old Heman Marion Sweat courthouse is not only is it a historic building that will eventually be redone with state and federal money to make sure we're honoring the building, but it also will never fall apart. In other words, it is solid concrete. So as time has progressed and we've needed to grow the courthouse and we've needed to do different things like, get digital instead of rotary phones, we've had to really use that building hard. And it's showing its use there, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But so about almost a decade ago, we started talking about this courthouse. The need existed then as it does now. We are a rapidly growing population, and the county commissioners, some of whom have gone, some of whom are new, have voted to build a courthouse and voted to put those bonds for your review in the fall. The courthouse is planned to service us and give us 39 courthouses up to 2035. This is some of the problems with the current courthouse. I took out the pictures of the rat droppings and the rat hair. I think, you can say that and it does what it needs to do. But this is a lady, these elevators are tiny. I was told by a family lawyer today that the one that was broken last week isn't broken anymore, but there's a new one that's broken and you have to push both elevator buttons to get that one to work. They actually don't manufacture the parts for the elevators, the 3 elevators in the current courthouse. They have to have those parts built and designed because they're not made anymore. There is limited access for people with mobility issues, particularly in the small spaces and the cramped spaces, and because there's so much technology that's had to go into that courthouse, a lot of it's just taped on the floor. So if you're mobility impaired at all, it's a fairly dangerous place for you. That is the county's phone system that's falling out of that ceiling. That's the phone system for the whole county. Why it works, I don't know. It shouldn't work, but there you go. That's what it looks like. This is all of the county's servers. Those are water pipes. If that were to go down, we'd be in real trouble. It's just the building is 84 years old and it needs to be given a real big facelift, and we need to build access. But the part that gets me the most, and I think most people, is the absence of safe, quiet, and even safe places where there are actual guardians or parents or court folks there to take care of our kiddos. On the tour I took a couple of weeks ago with Judge Dietz, I noticed that there were 2 tiny kiddos. They were so small that their feet didn't hit the bench. And their parents were called in for a CPS case. I know the prosecutor, she's my husband's ex-wife, so I know what she does for a living. And when Joan Peterson calls you into court, something's really wrong. Your parental rights are being severed. I know that about her career. And those little kids just sat there for the entire hour and a half I was in the courtroom alone. All of these people were sitting around them arguing about their cases, lawyers, etc., arguing about their cases, and they were there unattended and alone for the entire time that I was there. I don't know if later on somebody paid attention to see if they needed to eat or go to the bathroom, but it's untenable. This is our waiting area for kiddos. That's the couch that some UT kid left behind, I guess. And other courthouses around the country have used private money to do sort of like a Dell Children's Center, where it's a calming center, it's a drop-off center, so if your parents have stuff they need to do at the courthouse, they don't just leave you in a hallway somewhere. We need to invest in our kids, and we also need to invest in the folks that are going to that courthouse that have abuse issues with other family members. You're riding up on the same elevator with the guy that beat you up this weekend when you're trying to get your protective order, as is the judge that's trying the case. It is not safe. It is an absolute tragedy waiting to happen. Julia Spann, Executive Director. There's a typo in this that I meant to fix today, so Sorry, actually there's two. But anyway, Julia Span from Safe Place. You know, I've talked to her several times about her support of the courthouse, and she wants that building centrally located for her clients that particularly don't have cars, because if you're at Safe Place, something's gone wrong. You don't have everything you need to conduct your daily life safely and efficiently. She wants it downtown, she wants it in a central location. Where we have the location currently planned, there's 54 bus lines that go half a block from there. A lot of talk in the community has been, oh, it'll be cheaper if you move it uptown to airport. There are three buses that go to that airport site. So, if we're going to get people that are actually using the courthouse, those 200,000 Travis County residents that use that courthouse every year there without bringing their cars downtown, I mean, that's the place where most transit, where most people are served. They can get in and out there. So she is a strong supporter because of the people that she works with. What's the plan? We want something safe, affordable, modern, efficient. Now what you see there is a rendering of the building. It's not designed, there's no architectural design that's gone into it yet. It's just the URS consultants, this is what you need to put in the building.
Program.
Right, so there's no, you know, it's not fancy, it doesn't look good yet. And there's going to be parking. Now I know that urbanists don't like parking, but the other group of people we're dealing with, almost everyone else is like, there's not enough parking. So there will be parking underneath this building. There's going to be 4 levels of parking. You can't go to 5 levels unless you're cutting into limestone and the water table. So that parking will be monetized in evenings and on weekends to offset the cost of the building. We estimate it's about $1 million a year in revenue. But we do need places for judges to park. We do need places for employees to park, although the county has dedicated themselves to bringing down the number of employees that are bringing cars into downtown. They, along with Adler, would like to bring the full ridership on public transport to downtown up by 20%. So what are our project funding principles? Because all this children's need and family violence need is fine, but how are we going to pay for it, right? Guys, if the argument about equal access to justice and protecting children and vulnerable families does not appeal to you, let me just say that interest rates are at a historic low. We have a AAA bond rating. It's not going to get cheaper to borrow money. Those interest rates are set, you read the paper like I do, those are set to go up. So we need to capitalize on our good fortune and this growth. I don't want to wait until the county gets sued and the times are bad to try and build a necessary constitutional function of the county. We are trying to drop the price of the project in a variety of ways, at least the sting to the taxpayer. We're trying to share some of that pain. The block downtown that the courthouse is scheduled to be built on, the courthouse doesn't take up the whole block. The other half of the block is scheduled for a long-term lease and for privates to build a tower. Part of that is to put some money back in the tax rolls for downtown because that's a valuable piece of property. Because we're contemplating doing that, and the county's coming out with an RFI probably in end of July, August.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
RFI.
Oh, sorry. You know, it's just a request for information. The county wants to do a project, and they want to tell people about the project so they can participate or not. They can choose to participate or not in the project. Look, we have heard a lot of feedback about what are you doing with all that property downtown? It's really valuable. We need this on the tax rolls, so the county has tried to package up property that is underused and either sell it or long-term lease it so we can build downtown, which is where we want those big buildings to go. We don't want them to go in somebody's neighborhood. We want them to go downtown in the central business district. Believe it or not, the county dropped your property taxes by 3% last year. Now, you didn't feel it because I didn't feel it because the valuations are going up so fast it doesn't matter. But they are a fairly fiscally conservative commissioner's court. I will say they have failed on large projects in the past, which is why this particular project is design build. We want to put as much risk on the person that built it And we know that counties aren't really great at doing big projects like the criminal courts complex, which was late, overpriced, and litigated. And look, that second tower can house either us in the future, the county in the future, or if, say, the state was to sell the hobby building, they could swing out and move into that second tower. There's a lot of places where we can partner with other governmental agencies to put some land back on the tax rolls so that downtown Austin is maximally utilized. Just where does this money come from? Most of the county's money comes from property taxes. And I want you to know that. And like the valuation of business property and private property is $119 billion. We have a lot of value right now. Where does it go to? Well, the difference between counties and cities is this. Cities can do anything that the state doesn't specifically say they can't do, right? So if you're a home rule city in Texas, you can do public-private partnerships, counties can't do them. You can do all kinds of stuff that counties can't do because counties operate in this way. Counties can only do the things the state constitution allows them to do. So roads, a certain level of law enforcement, indigent care, the justice system. Most of the money that we spend in this graph, that your money goes to, is those things, is justice-related, judicial-related activities in law enforcement. How much is it actually going to cost you? I think that's, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks, right? That little graph there, just a little something I threw together. Keep in mind that not everybody gets a homestead exemption, but 66% of private residences receive a homestead exemption. So this rate may not apply to you specifically, but it applies to the bulk of homeowners in the county. And this is not a city project where only city taxpayers are paying for it. People in Pflugerville are paying for it, Lakeway, Maynard, Del Valle. This is not just Austin like that train. But this is what it breaks down to per year and per month. I voted for it, but final thoughts. The current courthouse cannot be expanded. Impossible. It needs to be restored. To really get the rats out of there, to really fix the leaks and the whatnot, you got to pull everybody out of there and restore it. It's a very important building. Painter versus Sweat. Look, Heman, Marion Sweat would have not been able to attend law school at UT as an African American had he not used that courthouse to start his case that went to the Supreme Court. There is a reason to restore that building. It's a national building. We got to do it. But we can't keep operating our civil and family courthouse there. We just can't do it. The cost of this project is shared throughout the county and supported by folks like Safe Place Casa, volunteers, court employees, and officials. Family lawyers are particularly happy about this because the ones, look, here's the deal. If you're worried about affordability, let's talk about the lawyers for a minute. You know who Becky Beaver is, right? Gotta call her fastest if you're gonna get the best deal on your divorce, but you gotta have money walking in that door. She's a huge proponent of the courthouse because, look, affordability and equal access to justice are our values in this county. It matters. And so her clients, hey man, they're hiring private judges and doing their mediations and they're doing this and that somewhere else. So the haves have already left the Heman, Marion Sweat. The have-nots are stuck in the Heman, Marion Sweat. So, what are we offering citizens in Travis County? Bad infrastructure that doesn't give everyone equal access to justice and their day in court for their family business. To me, if you're going to talk about affordability, you have to also talk about equal access to justice. Those two things go hand in hand. I get that everybody wants to keep their property taxes low, but what kind of place are we if we make our kids sit in some rat hole while they're waiting to go back to their foster home? The courthouse will be centrally located. If you put it somewhere else, it's not going to make the building cheaper. The reason the courthouse is expensive is because it's not like your average ordinary office complex. What we have now, as I mentioned earlier, in that little elevator, all the parties in a suit sitting together, this courthouse has 3 elevator shafts. to keep people in custody away from the judiciary, away from the public, so the only time they meet is in the actual courtroom. We have a blast floor underneath that parking. It is after 9/11. You can't just throw up a crappy ass office building. You actually have to make it something that can sustain some damage. And we actually wanted this thing to last. I want to get 84 years out of this, right? I don't want to build a building, ask the public to invest in a building that 10 years from now we're having to redo. So there's a reason it's expensive, and putting it on an airport does not make it cheaper. All right. Does anybody have questions about location, parking, anything? I am here to exhaust you with information.
Let me start
Yeah.
with the questions. So you put up the chart for how much it would cost, you know, to various taxpayers, to a taxpayer with this kind of home and a taxpayer with this kind of home.
Yeah.
How much will it cost overall to the county? How much is the size of it?
$291,600,000. Originally, it was $340, but the Citizens Oversight Committee that's been working on this project for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now, dropped the price and dropped the number of courtrooms in the building.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
can you repeat that number, please?
$291,600,000.
As Belinda Powell would say, it's an all-in budget, so that's the furniture, that's
Yep.
the whole works.
291,600.
So, and you've mentioned the site. Where is it?
All right, it's on the south side of Republic Park. It's catty corner to the federal courthouse. The county has done tree surveys. We're not going to kill those oaks. Because that's it. Look, Republic Park, there are very few parks left in downtown Austin with historical significance that haven't, you know, that people are trying to preserve, and Republic Park is one of them. So we are cognizant that we don't want to build a building that's going to kill everything in the park, like the trees, the heritage oaks.
All right. Why don't we call it for the
Okay.
for the presentation? Thank you very much. And what I'd love to get now is a sort of, you know, first thoughts and impressions, not just on the presentation, but that you've had a sort of overall picture of how is this plan to you, and what are the questions that you still have, or what are the areas that you've been thinking about from the rest of our panelists. So maybe starting with Ron.
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Aura, for inviting me to this panel. I really appreciate it. I realize everybody's going to thank you, but thank you very much for inviting me to speak in this panel. And particularly as a non-member of Aura, I appreciate the fact that Aura's leadership has always been willing to entertain and engage points of view that range from a little bit different to very different. So that all being said, my general impression as I've looked into this project, as I've heard some are not different after hearing this presentation they were before, only because, and I really appreciate the presentation, I think that anyone who tracks this understands that we need a new courthouse, and the current courthouse is not functioning. And stipulating that the current courthouse doesn't cut it, and it is unsafe and overwhelmed, that it probably needs to be downtown for a whole range of reasons, not just around transit, but also, although we should probably discuss location at some point too today, part of being downtown in Texas probably means that the county courthouse is there, just as a matter of form. I think there are all kinds of things. The general reaction, however, especially in light of both a failed school bond and a failed transit bond in the last 2 years, which arguably more people who would vote on this would use and impact more people's lives, is that $292 million is a huge sum of money. And so I think that to make a successful case, we have to get more granular about what that buys. And I guess I was a little concerned when I read it. I was looking at the $292 million figure and looking at that on a square footage basis. Granted, this is not an office building, but just some dollars in context. take 3 major public buildings built in the last 10 years in Austin. The Blanton Museum of Art, 155,000 square feet, $83 million, $575 a square foot. That's the only reference number that I could find that was above this on a square footage basis, and the reason why that's potentially an interesting comparison is because of the special use cases that go into something like a Blanton, which are unique to that purpose just as unique to this. Frostbank Tower, 33 stories, $251 a square foot, cost $83 million to build. The Austonian, 56 stories, $338 a square foot, cost 200 million-ish. My source on all that stuff was Wikipedia, by the way, so I'm representing the voice of the average person here to a certain extent. The point is, those values of half to a third to 2/3, I think, are more in line, at least as a default position, with what people will expect when they start holding this up. Because really, and then when we take that amount, I've also been a little concerned to hear that that number is an all-in number, that it includes not just depreciating assets like furniture, but assets that soon become totally obsolete, like technology purchases. You know, being in the technology business and selling technology in the public sector off and on, we find ourselves sometimes when selling this stuff that public agencies are not able to get out of investments they've made because they're still defraying or depreciating technology purchases that were purchased with debt money, and find themselves in a situation they can't upgrade. I read a story this morning, it was fascinating, about how the Grand Rapids, Michigan's school systems, AC and heat, are run by a Commodore Amiga that a high school student programmed in 1990, which is an incredible story. It actually speaks to what a great computer the Amiga was. But nevertheless, I don't want to find ourselves 20 years from now where we're using bond money to pay down interest on things that have been obsolete for 15 years. Make sense? So that's my general impression.
Okay, I'm going to gather up
Sorry, that was a long way to go.
the general impressions and then come back. So Roger next.
Sure, I jotted down a few issues that I think are really key here, and I'm just going to enumerate those, and I don't know if we want to sort of elaborate on them right now, but I'll at least mention what they are. So there's this issue of, you've got sort of a prime downtown location. Is this the quote-unquote highest and best use of that location? On the other hand, you have the point that Rom made, which is government services belong in centrally located areas. Same time, you have Genevieve's point about the transit access. She mentioned the number of bus routes, I believe.
54.
Right. So I happen to live on that block, and it is the nexus of all, I call it the nexus of all public transportation.
Yeah.
I personally love it.
We can't find a bus route that doesn't run by that site.
So that is a very key consideration there. Another related consideration is the possibility of a rail connection from the east side of downtown, or from even just that's Republic Square area to Seaholm. And there are some folks who would like to preserve the possibility of that kind of connection, and they see this property as being the place where you would need to make that connection. So there's concern around that. There's been talk about how it would even be possible to incorporate that into the design of the building and run rail through that property while at the same time building this courthouse on that property. Personally, I don't know if that's technically feasible or not. There's the parking issue that's key, and I'd really like to get into that one when we have time. Activation of the sidewalk and activity outside of business hours. So what kind of activity are you bringing to that block and to that area? What happens after business hours?
Alive after 5.
So, okay, so there might be some programming, I understand, and things
There's a black
like
box
that.
theater design for the party. I'm not kidding.
But that's another sort of issue which I think that they'll be able to address at least the efforts that they're making to try to address it. And location, okay, location of government services, we already did that one. The timing of the second tower is something I'd like to know more about, as well as the